Hi, welcome back to Unicycle Basics. My name is Finn. Today we're talking about freewheel unicycles and how you can get started riding them. So what is a freewheel unicycle? You may know that on a normal unicycle, the cranks are fixed to the wheel. So when you pedal forward, the wheel turns forward. When you pedal backwards, the wheel turns backwards. On a freewheel unicycle, like this one, if you pedal forward, the wheel turns forward, but if you stop, the wheel continues spinning. And if you pedal backwards, nothing really happens. Pretty much just like any bike you've ever ridden. Before we get started with the tutorial section of this video, I thought we should take a few seconds and talk about freewheel unicycles in general. Freewheel unicycles have been around for quite a while, but they've really grown in popularity in the last few years. Why is that? I think the main factor is freewheel unicycles are just really fun. A lot of people think there's big benefits to being able to stop pedaling and just rolling downhill, but I think objectively there isn't much benefit. You're not really resting that much because you still have to keep your balance. But what it is a really fun new challenge. There might be some very specialized cases where a freewheel can be faster or better than a fixed unicycle. But for all-around mountain unicycling, I think it can at best be equal to a fixed wheel, but not beat it. But not everything is about objective measures. I've ridden most of the trails I have at home dozens of times, and they honestly can be a bit boring to me. Doing them on a freewheel, and it made me smile ear to ear because they've all felt like a fresh new challenge. Let's quickly talk about equipment. Obviously, you're going to need a unicycle with a freewheel hub. This one is a QX RGB with their PPFAX freewheel hub. They sponsored me this unicycle, and I really wouldn't have been able to get into freewheel unicycling without their support. So a big thank you to them. There's other hubs available, and I'll link a set down below where you can look those up. Also, you're going to need your standard safety equipment. So for me, that's a helmet, that's gloves, and that's knee pads. Regarding wheel size and crank length, I would go for something that you're already familiar with. For me, that's a 27.5-inch wheel, and I'm using 137mm cranks, which is longer than I'm used to, but I'm not going for speed anyway. Make sure that your brake is functioning and set up well. For the method that I'll be describing in this video, we will be using the brake to keep our balance. One quick point about difficulty. Freewheel unicycling isn't easy. It's not super hard either, but even if you're a very good unicyclist, you shouldn't expect to hop on it and just go. It will probably take some practice to get there. While any unicyclist can learn how to ride a freewheel unicycle, for best results, I think before you start, you should be pretty confident on a normal unicycle. And you should be somewhat familiar with using the brake. For your very first attempt, find yourself something to hold on to while you're getting onto the unicycle. We'll talk about different mounts in a lot more detail later, but for now, have your cranks horizontal, pull the brake, and step onto the front pedal. Don't step onto the back pedal, because the cranks will just spin backwards. So, cranks horizontal-ish, it really doesn't matter for now. Step onto the front pedal, pull yourself onto the unicycle, and get comfortable there. Still, keep the finger on the brake. And then, sort of, find your feet, and you can start riding forwards. Into the brake, pull the brake the whole time. Falling off very quickly in your first attempt is completely normal. You are probably quite used to pedaling backwards to keep your balance, and taking that away is quite a strange experience. The very first goal here is to train yourself to use the brake instead of pedaling backwards. So when your weight is too far back, pull the brake harder, and if your weight is too far forward, let off the brake a bit and pedal forwards. In the very beginning, I would recommend to drag the brake the whole time. That way, it's easier to apply it smoothly and not get thrown off the front. The idea here is learning how to not fall off first. Riding against the brake and not doing much freewheeling really isn't very elegant or efficient. But this helps you to learn the reflexes that are necessary to keep you upright. With some practice, you will go from very jerky and insecure brake application and pedaling to getting smoother and smoother. You may notice that in the beginning it's easier to ride uphill on a freewheel. That's because the hill is naturally slowing you down, almost as if you are constantly applying the brake a bit. I think you can use that to your advantage. Just find yourself a nice and gentle uphill, ride up with it. That way you don't fall off as often, you get more time on the unicycle, actually gaining experience instead of falling off all the time. The steeper the hill, the more similar it is to riding a fixed unicycle. So if it's too steep, I don't think you actually learn anything. I would think of this as something to mix in when you're getting frustrated on flat ground. I generally recommend practicing for 15 to 20 minutes on one exercise and then switching it up. Speaking of which, before we get into how to improve your riding, relying less on the brake and freewheeling more, let's talk about free mounting. Not having to go back to a tree to remount after you fell off will make your practice much more efficient. So I'd consider learning it once you can ride 50 meters or so. There are many different ways to mount a freewheel, and I'm just going to show you a few of my favorites. The first one is front foot first. So, almost like I told you to get on the unicycle in the beginning with assist, front foot on the pedal first, cranks roughly horizontal. Let's make both pedals flat here. Front foot on the pedal, lock the brake with your finger, and then you sort of heave yourself onto the unicycle. Let's do that again from a different perspective. Cranks horizontal, pedals nice and level, front foot on the front pedal first, lock the brake and step on the front foot hard. You can step on it because you're locking the wheel with the brake. Lock the pedal, mount the unicycle, lean forward and ride away. The reason I like this mount is because it's nice and slow, so I feel pretty safe doing it even in more complicated situations. One disadvantage is that it heavily relies on the brake. I might even call it impossible to do brakeless. If you wear loose pants or even just with a high seat, I think it can also be difficult to get yourself over and onto the seat. While we can also argue if style matters or not, I'll also say that this isn't the most casual or cool looking mount. Second method is going to be the jump mount. Again, we're starting with our cranks nice and horizontal, our pedals flat, but this time we're going to jump onto the unicycle with both feet at the same time. So both feet starting from behind the unicycle at the ground, one hand on the handle, one finger on the brake. We don't need to lock the brake this time, but it's nice to have it there for its control already. And we're going to jump off from both feet over the unicycle. I like to have my backhand here on the saddle as an extra bit of control. So I'm going to just demonstrate this for now. Let's do this again. Cranks nice and horizontal, hand on the handle, finger on the brake, and we're going to aim forward with our body so that we can ride away from the start. Jump mounts may seem intimidating, but if you can jump high enough, the technique is actually super easy. It seems scary, but I think of all the mounts, there's the least coordination and balance required. I'm also going to stress leaning forward again. This pretty much applies for all the mounts. Since we cannot pedal backwards, our weight absolutely has to be in front of the axle. Compared to the front foot first method, jump mounts don't rely on the brake as much. If you execute them very well, you can actually do them brakeless. However, it doesn't feel as safe to me, so if I'm standing in front of a steep and technical section, I won't use this one. So once you can do a jump mount, we can try to make it a bit more casual by making it a mixture between a jump mount and a rolling mount. So we're going to walk, and once the cranks are horizontal, we're going to jump onto the unicycle. Let me quickly show you that. One more time. We're going to start from walking. When the cranks are horizontal, or almost horizontal, jump onto the unicycle from behind the unicycle out of the walking motion. Compared to the regular jump mount, this requires a lot more coordination. On most freewheels, the pedals will still spin a bit with the wheel, so you have to learn the timing of your steps and the pedals coming around at the right moment. But it looks much cooler, so this is the method I tend to choose to quickly get onto the unicycle in easy terrain. I am again using the brake for control, but if done well, I don't need to rely too heavily on it. And just like the regular jump mount, I would suggest that you focus on the front pedal the most. The last mount I want to show you is back foot first. Honestly, I've never really gotten good at this mount, but quite a few people seem to like it, so I thought I should show you this in case it works better for you than it does for me. We're going to start with our pedal pretty close to the bottom. We're going to push ourselves from the foot on the ground over the unicycle. You can again use the brake for a bit of assistance and keeping your balance during the mount. Okay, let's try this. You can see that this sort of looks awkward for me. I've really never quite figured this out. So if anyone can do this and wants to make a tutorial, please feel free. Or if I'm doing something wrong, please also message me. Since I'm not great at this mount, I can't give you too many detailed tips. But while trying a bunch of them for this video, I figured out that you can use the back foot to pull yourself onto the unicycle in a way. This also is one of the mounts that you should be able to do brakeless. I can't, but people that do it well can. I forgot to record a clip of this, but on a downhill this mount is much easier and I've occasionally used it there. Now that we're done talking about mounting, let's talk about riding and how to ride more smoothly and efficiently. In my mind, there's two parts to this. First off is pedaling smoothly. If you pedal smoothly, you're not going to be thrown forward and backward as much, and you're not going to have to use the brake to manage your balance as much. Then the second component is being more efficient on the brake and extending those gliding or coasting phases. Pedaling smoothly will partially come by itself. The more you ride, the earlier you can detect slight imbalance and adjust the force on your pedals accordingly. But one method I found to practice it is trying to stay off the brake as much as possible. You can see that I'm keeping my finger extended here, and the goal is to only use the brake if I really need it and to avoid getting into coasting or gliding at all. To extend those coasting or gliding periods, there's two exercises which I'm going to show you. First one I'm going to show you here. It's starting on flat ground, riding along and trying to enter this gliding period deliberately and then trying to go as far as possible with it. Then secondly, you can also try this downhill, and there you might not even need to pedal in between. You can just learn the brake control by itself. So we're just riding in, trying to get some speed and then stopping to pedal and trying to go as far as possible. Smooth brake control is an important part of this. If you brake too hard, you will quickly fall off the front or at least have to start pedaling to catch back up. But maybe even more important is finding the right body position. It's hard to give generalized tips, but for me, I have to lean very far forward so that I don't need the brake as much. It almost feels like I'm falling off the front the whole time. Also, notice how my back foot is pointing downward. This helps to push the unicycle forward and backwards under me, which is a way to adjust balance without needing the brake. Brake gliding on a hill. Find yourself something that isn't super steep, that you can go down but not get too fast too quickly, or else it might get dangerous. This one is just about perfect, I think. It's also not too rough, not too many objects in the way. Nice and easy, so we can concentrate on the skill. Brake gliding isn't super easy, but it's not rocket science either. If you fall off the back, or getting close to falling off the back, pull the brake harder so that you get moved forward. If you're close to falling off the front, let off the brake so that the wheel is going out the front in front of you again. As overly simple as that may sound, I really think you don't need much more than that to go out and practice this. And once you get it, you will probably fall in love with Freewheel Unicycling. This really is the big reward for all the extra difficulty. This is still at a speed that I could pedal and only slightly less exhausting than pedaling along, but it's just so much more fun. We've now talked about skills pretty much as far as I wanted to cover them in this video. Maybe at some point in the future we'll talk about jumps on the freewheel and coasting. But for now, I think you're ready to get out onto some trails and start your freewheel mountain unicycling journey. You can see the light is fading and it's getting dark, so it's time to finish the video. I hope you enjoyed this one and you learned something. If you have any further questions, of course, you can always ask them in the comments or in the forum, and people will help you out. See you on the next one. Unicycle Basics is a passion project for me. I'm doing to try and grow this awesome sport. So if you want to help out, the most important thing you can do is sharing these videos with anyone you think is interested in mountain unicycling. Also, like and subscribe on YouTube, so the YouTube algorithm will feed this to as many people as possible. If you want to help out with money and pay for some of the snacks I consumed when making these videos and some of the equipment I got, there will be a link in the description.